Well, hi, Bill. So great to see you today. My name is Jessica Cornelius. I am a franchise development director at Right at Home. Bill, we really appreciate you taking the time to, share with our listeners some of your experience in being a Right at Home owner. So before I start with anything, would you mind just sharing a little bit about like your name, your location, number of years you've been a Right at Home franchisee, as well as the number of territories you own?
Well, my name's Bill Love. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm going into my 13th year. Actually, today is the third. In 12 days, I'll go into my 13th year in the system. So I bought my franchise in 2010, November 15th, and I own two territories.
Well, fantastic. Well, perfect. And then what was your background before becoming a Right at Home franchise owner?
I was actually in the fashion business. I was
Oh,
a
really?
buyer and then a VP of merchandising for several large department store chains. Then I switched over to the manufacturing side, and I was a general merchandise manager of several kids brands like Nautica,
Oh, yeah.
Calvin Klein, Dockers, and I worked with rappers, which was kind of interesting. I
Did you?
ran Sean Puffy Combs kids brand, and
Oh
before
my
that, I
gosh.
ran Master P and Little Romeo. I ran their kids brands,
Oh
kids
my
and
gosh.
men's brands. So that's kind of an interesting sideline, right? That I
Absolutely.
was in that world actually.
Yes. So, I mean, that's a big change, from, running fashion brands and to going over to home care. So, what was the reason why you decided to make a shift?
Well, I could give a long story, but I'll give a little shorter story. I actually had a brand new baby in New York City. My wife and I
Okay.
were living there, new baby. Didn't want to raise the baby in New York City, right? And I also didn't want to commute 2 hours each way. So my wife and I are both from the South. She had family that's near Memphis. So I moved my family to Memphis, Tennessee. And I
Okay.
commuted back and forth to New York for 4.5 years. I lived in a 250 square foot studio apartment, third floor walk up. I flew out every Sunday night, flew home every Thursday night. And I did that for 4.5 years, and it worked well till my daughter got a little older and I needed to be there for more things. So I began to look for a business to buy so that I
Hmm.
could remain in Memphis. And my wife and I did some demographic studies, and we actually identified that the senior market was a great one. 2010 was the whole start of that boom in people turning 65. And actually found I bought an existing Right at Home. It was actually a fairly good size. They were doing 15 or 1600 hours a week when I bought it. But I was interested because we had already gone through with both my grandmothers having in-home care,
Hmm.
and we had done it with my wife's grandmother, who was a kind of a real country woman, strong, and she never wanted help, but eventually you need help, right? So that you can stay at
Yeah.
home safely and that type of thing. So we found it, went through the whole process, discovery day in Omaha, met with everybody back then. The team was a little smaller back then, right? So I
Mhm.
probably met almost everybody in the corporate office that day. Did my due diligence and talked to 6 or 8 franchisees on my validation calls, and made the decision to buy the business, which was interesting. I was the first $1 million sale that Right at Home had ever had. Uh,
Wow.
and we did it in 2010, which was not an easy time to put together a financing package, right? We were just still in
Cool.
the midst
Yep.
of what they called the Great Recession and everything else. So really proud of what we accomplished and the people I worked with to get it done. But that's kind of how I ended up with Right at Home.
Okay. And then now you said you and your wife were both originally from the South. So were you from the Tennessee area? Was your wife from
Nope,
the
actually,
Tennessee
I'm
area?
from Texas, and my wife was from Mississippi. but where
Okay.
she's from in Mississippi, 75 miles from Memphis. So,
Oh, okay.
yes. And
Perfect.
actually, when she first graduated college, she worked in Memphis. So that was her first job was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay. And did your wife go through the discovery process with you as far as your discovery day? Like, was she on the validation calls?
She did not. She did not.
Okay.
And for the longest time, she had her own career. She did go to training at one point in time and actually worked within the business for 7 or 8 months.
Okay.
And still is very knowledgeable about the business, but she also has a career in fashion. And
Okay.
she went back to that career because she really enjoyed it. And but you can work together, actually. And when I had her here, I loved it. And she still comes in and works out of the office some, so that when I'm not here, she can make those decisions and sign checks and just stay on top of things.
Absolutely. And you had shared, some of your personal experience with your grandmother, your wife's grandmother. You really saw that need for in-home care. And I think really, at least for me, years back, I didn't even know things like that existed. I thought that, if you needed help, you had to go into a nursing home, and we know seniors that they don't want to go into a nursing home. A lot of times they're afraid to ask for help because they don't want that to be the repercussion. And family members, they live so far apart, from their, 65 and older, either, parent or grandparent, because of the transient nature of our society. So when, we actually see a situation where it hits home and we see those people we love and the kind of care that they can provide, I think that always gives, all the owners and everybody who works for Right at Home that common theme. It's a business with a purpose. It's not just going somewhere and getting a paycheck. It's actually doing something that is impacting, society in a positive way. So when you, moved to Memphis and you were looking at other industries, were you looking at other businesses besides home care? And then what ended up, having you guys make that decision? Hey, this is the right business for me.
We did look at other businesses besides home care. But the reason we decided on this one was really a strong belief that people should be able to remain at home for as long as possible and to live safely and with some dignity, right? So that you can stay in a place where you're very comfortable and you've lived there. A lot of times we take care of people who've lived in their homes for 40, 50, 60 years, right? And that is where they're most comfortable. And we really saw a chance to do some good for our community, as well as build a really nice life for our family by getting involved in the senior care business. And I will say, after I met everybody at Right at Home, was so impressed with their approach. And, you hear terms like honesty and integrity thrown around, but that is how Right at Home operates. And I've been involved in both Franchise Advisory Council, when that's what it was called. I was on the original brand and Marketing Promotional Council, and then served again on the SLC for 2 or 3 terms. And every interaction I've had with whoever is running Right at Home, they always think about what's best for their franchisees, the business, and the people we take care of. And when you find that, that's really a great thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now you've been doing this for a number of years. You started in 2010. So tell me a little bit about what was a typical day for you when you first got started in the business versus kind of how things are now that, you've been doing this for a number of years.
Well, that's interesting. When I first got in the business, obviously we were doing 15 to 1,700 hours a week, which is a lot when you're a new owner and you get thrown in. Lost some people, not because when I took over they left, but just through some attrition and everything. So I bought it in November. In February, I made a decision to learn every single job that was done in the office. Now I'd already worked a shift or two. Actually, my 4th day of owner, being an owner, I had to go work a shift because there was a client that only took males. And
Mhm.
my caregiver who was assigned did everything right, called out in plenty of time, did all those things. We couldn't find any men. So I got a
Mhm.
call. I was at my daughter's ballet recital.
Oh, wow.
And this is before Uber and Lyft. We're all in one car. I've got a bunch of people, and I had to get a cab back to my house to the
Mhm.
car, and I worked a full shift.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I had worked a few shifts. But on the inside of the office, I wanted to understand staffing. I wanted to understand hiring. I wanted to understand all the billing and the accounting processes. So I did everything so that, one, you have credibility when you're talking to the people that you work with, that you understand what that job is.
Mhm.
And so I did that, and I took, for about a year, I really did everything in conjunction with the people I had working with me. And then I began to once I had a comfort level and an understanding, back away from some of it. And now that I'm in my 13th year, there's a lot of those things I don't do anymore, but I understand them because today, I mean, we've more than doubled the business from when we bought it. And
Wow.
it's a much more complicated business than it was when I first got in 2010, from a regulation standpoint, from a employee-employer relationship standpoint. There's just so much more. So really, my focus today is on being a true chief executive, right? And making sure that we're going in the right direction, that we're in compliance with both state and federal regulations, and that financially we have the money to operate and feed the growth that we're experiencing right now. And then hiring the right people to run the day-to-day part of the business, and give them the tools and the confidence to run that part of the business.
Absolutely. And I love that too. I think that says a lot about you as a person, to sit there and say, hey, I'm going to learn every single position. And I think that makes you so much of a better leader to really understand the ins and outs. It's not something you're going to do, forever, but at the beginning, to really put yourself in your employee's shoes and know kind of the challenges, what the job entails. And I think, from my standpoint, it will help you make better decisions by doing that. So you've, doubled the business since 2010, which is absolutely amazing. What do you think are some of the things that have contributed to having so much growth over the last, 13 years?
Well, a couple of things. One, and I don't want to sound like a cliche, but we really treat everybody who works here. We're a big family, right? Some days we're a family with a little conflict, but we're a family.
Yeah.
And the care team is the most important part of our business. I say this in orientation. You got to understand, I live in the South, so we use things like this. But I always ask them, what's a lawnmower without an engine? Well, in the South, it's yard art, because somebody just puts it in the yard and lets it go there, right? Because it can't do anything.
Yeah.
And the care staff team is the engine that runs our business, right? So we set about trying to make sure you don't get rich being a caregiver, right? You don't get rich, but you can work for somebody who understands and validates what you do, and that what you do is very important. In fact, it's incredibly important, right? To allow somebody to live in their home safely and with more dignity than they would have in a facility. Not knocking facilities, people sometimes need to go there, but when you're in your own home, it's a much better life. And if you can do that with some help from us and our care team, that's an incredible result. So we wanted our care team members to understand that we valued them, and we spent a lot of time on that. I tried to personally get to know all the people who work for us, right? And know about their families. And I have what we call an open door policy. If my door's open and you walk in the office, I want you to come in and sit down and talk with me. And up until COVID hit, because that did affect a lot of things, I still had over 25 of my original 54 caregivers still worked for me in 2019. And today I still think it's 18 or 19 people still work for me out of the original 54, which is amazing, right? In our industry, there is some turnover and people move. So was really, really proud of that. And we made a decision to focus on the care team. And the other thing we focused on was we show up. We show up. I mean, I came out of an industry where Walmart was the best at replenishment, and they thought if you hit a 97% replenishment rate, that was excellent, right? Well, in home care, there's only one acceptable rate of, and that's 100%. We need to cover 100% of our shifts, or at least give the family the option to say, yes, I want a replacement, or no, I don't. And we built our business on dependability. We show up. Right? It may not be the person we want there at first, but we have somebody there who can do the job and take care of your needs, because that's most important. When you tell somebody you're going to show, you need to show. I've used this many times. When I was a GMM of a manufacturing company, and I'd have to call, let's say I had to call the VP of merchandising for Macy's and say, I'm going to be late on 300,000 pair of blue jeans for back to school. Yeah, they'd scream at you and just tell you and just make you feel like you were, this tall. And do you know what the hardest phone call to make is? To call Miss Smith and say, you know what, Miss Smith, today Miss Betty can't come. She's sick. Her child's sick. And you can't come to take care of Mr. Smith. And to hear the anxiety and the fear in Miss Smith's voice, because she counts on us to be there every day. And it's something else I do. Everybody I work with, family and clients, get my personal cell phone number. And I took a lot of interesting calls the first 2 years I was in the business, but it helped you build your business and understand. And I still take those calls. And I call people back on the weekends. I don't promise I'll answer it every time, but they'll hear back from me that same day, right? Because it's a very intimate business we're in. It's a very personal business we're in. And I feel like people should be able to talk to the owner when they need to, family members and the client. So the one thing, it's such a personal business, and you have to understand that, because we are taking care of people's loved ones. And as you mentioned, a lot of times we're taking care of loved ones when the children or the grandchildren or nieces and nephew live across the country, right? They may be 1,200 miles away and they're counting on us, right? And so that's the thing. It's an important business, and it's important that we show up on time. It's important to provide quality care, but it's really important to make sure that you're there, right? If you provide great care 2 days a week and you're supposed to be there 6, that's hard. That's horrible.
Exactly.
So work very hard at making sure we show up.
Yes. Well, and it sounds like you've done an amazing job creating a great culture, because I think, people will want to work harder and stay places longer and provide that best experience when they feel like they're valued. They feel like you actually care about, their lives, their family. You lead by example. You'll take phone calls if it's on the weekends, or, get in there and do different jobs. And I'm sure that is such a huge contributing factor to you having so much success. Now, what do you feel like is, out of all the support you've received, what do you feel like really helps contribute to your success, the most that Right at Home provides to you or other franchise owners?
There's always one thing that's at the very top, and that is going through the profit mastery system and then becoming part of a performance group. And I'll explain a performance group quickly, but it's where you get together with 9 or 10 other owners that have businesses similar to yours. And essentially you act as one another's board of directors, right? We open our books to them. We talk about what our problems are, what our opportunities are, and we give true feedback on those things. And one thing I have learned as an owner, you play to your strengths and you kind of try to ignore your weaknesses, right? So The performance group and profit mastery helps you understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and where you need to bring in help or backstop what you might consider some of your weaknesses, or where you're just not staring down a problem. So profit mastery, so that you understand your business, the P&L and the balance sheet. And then performance group, where you constantly have people help you run your business. So that is just really one of the greatest things that Right at Home ever set up. I also think the Homecare Pulse program is fantastic. Sometimes you may get, and I maybe shouldn't say this, but Homecare Pulse, I read the comments. It's not whether they gave me a 10, because I've had somebody 7 before and say, I love them and they show up on time and they provide great care. And that's only a 7. But it's the comments that you get both from your care team and from your clients that you're serving. Those comments give you great information to work on to help you improve your business. So we read each one, share it with the office. We talk about those comments and what they actually mean in the course of running our business. So I would tell you, those are the 2 things that I like the most. But I found, and I truly believe this, that you get all kinds of support from corporate, but you only get out of a system what you put in it. So that's why I felt it was important to serve on the FAC when they asked me to be part of that initial brand and Marketing Promotional Council, which was 2 years. And I was also on the FAC. It was a lot of time away from my business, but I thought it was important. And when somebody talked to me about running again and being on the SLC, I did it because I think it's important to put back into the system so you get more out of it, right? And it's wild how I may call my, used to call him your regional, used to call him your Right Start manager, but our business coach, and say, hey, I got this thing going on. And they would say, here's kind of what we think, but I'm going to put you in touch with Rosaline because she's dealt with this herself, right? Or I'm going to put you in touch with, Jay in Georgia, and you can talk to him. And it's just a great system of support with the franchisees. And I just think the more engaged you are in the system, the more you get out of the system.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. I mean, as far as like when you hear somebody else's experience and what they've been through and how they've dealt with it, for me, those types of interactions have a lot of credibility because it's like, I'm not the only one going through this. I don't have to figure it out on my own, and I can reach out. And even if, if that business coach can put me in touch with somebody who's been through, a similar situation to really help me, get through it because we can only see things, in our own lens. So sometimes it's all right, let's step back because we're so close to the situation. Let's step back. Let's look at this from a different lens. We get that clarity to be able to move forward. So thinking back, to 2010, if you could go back and talk to yourself, then what is one piece of advice that you think would be really valuable to you to know as a brand new franchise owner, looking at different businesses and coming into a system?
And I still give this when I do validation calls. The most important thing, I think, for a person who's looking to become a franchisee or a brand new franchisee is to know your marketplace. And by that, I mean, you need to know who your competitors are. You need to know what price they charge for their services. You need to comp shop 10 or 15 of the top people who do this kind of work in your market to find out exactly what they do. And some people aren't comfortable with that, but that gives you a great snapshot of what the market looks like. And then I also called and asked about becoming an employee and that process. So I understood what the pay scale was. So here's what you charge, here's what you pay. And then you can begin to build, yes, I have an understanding of the business, and yes, I can provide good care and I can earn a living doing this, right? So it's really, it's understanding the marketplace and the marketplace that you operate in, because every market's different. Memphis is
Mhm.
different than Nashville. Nashville is different than Atlanta. Atlanta is different than Miami. And so you need to understand your own personal marketplace
Yep,
so that you can be most successful running your business.
absolutely. I love that. And Bill, I so appreciate your time. I love people like you, people who really do make a difference in the world, and that's really my goal every single day. I went through a situation with my grandmother as well. And, I remember, once she passed, thinking, what, I can change the way that I feel inside by finding great owners, who can really create a ripple effect in the communities. Because it touches so many people's lives. It's so needed. We're all going to get old eventually, and the only alternative is if we die. So most of us are going to get old. And I think the more awareness that, we can have, the greater impact it's going to have on our own lives eventually, but in the lives of so many people we love, because it's not just your employees, it's not just your clients, it is their family members. It touches so many lives. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you today. And from the bottom of my heart, I so appreciate what you do. I think you're an amazing owner. And I'm really proud to be a part of an organization, with people like you.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. And I will say it's a business where you go home at night and you feel really good about what you did, because in most cases, we've improved the lives of 120 people every single day, right? Their lives are better. They're living in a place where they want to live, and they're doing it safely and maintaining some dignity within their senior years. So it's hard to beat that. It's hard to beat that combination.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bill. It was such a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.